Hello and good evening to everyone. Karibuni sana. This is our first webinar as scheduled. So for today, we're having a webinar on the topic of management of the business consulting. And this is a conversation that has been really necessary, especially during this period of COVID-19, where COVID-19 has redefined how we do business thereafter and how we manage organizations from this time forward. Entrepreneurship, innovation, and the leadership of change becomes a new dependency on stability and growth. To help take us through this particular topic is Julian Rowa, who is the CEO for Schedules. He is a doctoral candidate with the University of Liverpool. Julian is also a scholar and practitioner passionate about bridging the gap between theories and practices. And as a strategic expert and a conversational intellect and an academic consultant, Julian delights in addressing the simple yet complex questions that define reality. And by addressing the workplace-based problems from a multiple dimensional outlook. So without much further ado, I'll welcome Julian to start us off for this particular webinar. Hope to make it interesting and very informative. The entire session will take about 45 minutes. No, the entire webinar will be for 1 hour. Julian will be making a presentation of 45 minutes. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a Q&A section for 15 minutes. Feel free to drop any questions that you might be having on our chat box. Other than that, my name is Purity Wanjiro. I'm the Business Development Specialist for Schedules Consulting Limited. So Julian, karibu sana. We've been expecting this for a while, so take us through. Thank you. Sorry, Julian, you are on mute.
Thank you, Purity. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, very grateful for that very interesting and powerful introduction. For those who are meeting me for the first time again, my name is Julian Rowa, the CEO of Schedules Business Consulting. I'm also a student of University of Liverpool, completing my doctoral program in business. The space or the area of consulting is one that is very exciting for me because I think they come with lots of promises and they are actually the people we see as solution providers for our businesses and the challenges that we face therein. It is pivotal to note that during this time of Corona, when a lot of businesses were in distress, it is the one time we really wanted to see the visibility of consultants as they go about resolving our day-to-day work problems. But the many friends that I have had the chance to connect with discussing this issue, a lot of consultants went missing in action. A lot of critical questions are therefore arising, asking what needs to change about how consultants do business. So I want to invite you to my presentation that I will make very concise and precise. Hopefully it will be an interesting one for you. At the completion of this presentation, I'll be inviting you to shoot your questions so that we can deepen our understanding. So allow me to just, if you just give me a minute. Just give me a minute, I just want to get it. Just a second, I'm just trying to pull out my PowerPoint presentation. Oh, where is it? Let me try that again. Okay, where is it? Just give me a minute. I seem not to be able to trace it. Just give me a minute. Oh. So Purity, if you just, can you hear me, Purity?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, if you just give me a minute, I'm trying to trace my presentation that was right here with me. Let me see if I can trace it. Yeah, I think I've seen it. Just give me a minute. Okay, let me see if I can pull it from where it is now.
Yes, I think we can see it now.
Okay, just a minute. Okay, just a minute. Okay. Can you see it now, Purity?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yes.
Yeah, I think now I got it. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And sorry for that, everyone. Okay. What I'd like us to discuss today, therefore, is how do we manage business consulting today on the backdrop of the lessons we have learned from COVID. Now, to start us off, I'll give you a little bit of a preamble so that we can align our understanding of what the issues are. We are arguing at schedules, and we are asking the question, will running businesses or managing organizations be the same ever again, following what Corona has just manifested to us? We are also asking the question, should business consultancy then take a new dimension? So if Corona has come up with different lessons, appreciating that we did not come out strongly to support those organizations that we work with, do we need to change the dimension on how we approach solving business problems? Is there a need for consultants to evaluate their methods? Again, Corona is forcing us to ask those questions. When we were expected to be seen, when our visibility was required the most, I think we went a little quiet. We also ask the question at schedules, will scripted policies, the policies that run businesses and organizations, the processes and the procedures, which we all know are designed to be static and to be adhered to, the question becomes, will that now, or will they now compete with a need for agility, which basically means changing the way we do things on a need basis? Will it compete with the need for innovation? So when you're talking about innovation changing the way we do things, we are beginning to question our policies, our procedures, and our processes. And again, these policies, how will they compete with the need for our organizations and businesses to continue evolving around with change? Another question we're asking at schedules is, should practitioners then reinvent their work practices? So if we are sticklers to rules like policies, processes, and procedures, what is Corona telling us about that? Do we need to change our outlook? Do we need to redesign the processes as we know them? Do we need to create some flexibility around them? Those are some of the questions that arise following what happened to businesses and organizations during Corona. We are also arguing that consultants will come under intense scrutiny more than ever before. I can bet that should you want to sell your services to do as a consultant, there'll be a lot more questions asked of you than was the case prior to February of 2020. This presentation, therefore, is designed to provoke this kind of conversation so that as consultants, we can position ourselves better within the sector that we have chosen to do business. Now, what is the objective? What should be the end result of this presentation? One, I hope, or we hope, to trigger thinking on what consultants should be doing and be aware of. So we are creating an awakening to consultants that there's a new thinking mentality that we need to develop as solution providers. What is the other objectives? The other objective is to raise the stakes on what procurers, those who buy our services, procurers of consultancies, should expect and demand. I'm trying to argue here that the expectations will change, the demands will change, and as consultants, we need to be aware of that. Finally, my last objective in this presentation is to share what we as schedules intend to offer and how we will do it in terms of our approach going forward, deriving lessons from COVID-19. All this is informed by four things. One, our experience as consumers of consulting services. I pride myself of about 20, 25 years of service in employment, and I've had the privilege really of consuming the services of consultants. So I know what I want from a consultant better today than I ever did. Two, this is also informed by my experience as a consultant, which I've actively done in the last 4 years. Again, as I've said, I've been in the corporate world for many years. I know where the pain points are. So my experience as a practitioner also is guiding this conversation. And finally, I have engaged quite a bit, as Purity has mentioned to you, in academia. And in academia, we actually talk so much about theories, we talk about concept, we talk about models, and we try to compare that with what is happening at the place of work. Now, based on that experience as well, we are placed in a very good place to scrutinize or evaluate this question. Now, what are we seeing that is different from what the case was in March of 2020? What we are seeing now, and which consumers and consultants and other practitioners should be aware of, is we are seeing a lot more social turmoil. So when we are talking about less face-to-face engagement, that has a direct impact on how we will do business. And that must inform how we give solutions to those who come to us, those solutions. Two, what are we seeing as another emerging trend? There's the increase of economic challenges, and that will continue for a long time to come. Basically, what that then means is that the wealth that we had as a country has shrunk to quite some extent. There'll be so little, so many people will be competing for. And so we as consultants now, when we're giving advice to those that come to us, we must rethink or reshape how we position those recommendations. What else are we seeing going on post-COVID? There is and there will be increased competition, and the space for doing business will shrink. So the way we used to respond to queries or questions from customers has to change. We must rethink and go and investigate and probably research to clearly understand the implications of the increased competition, so that when we are giving solutions to the customers or the consumers that come to us, we are able to provide things that are viable and feasible. Technological advancement has turned out to be a big change event. And everybody now is thinking about how can they distribute their goods and services in a way that is a lot more sophisticated than it was before. Thanks again to what Corona has made us learn. We are seeing the emergence of new systems and processes of doing work. So for example, if I could give an example, border is becoming a key aspect of distribution. If you look at food chains today, they are depending heavily on this model of transportation. And the shift became more profound after February of 2020. What does this say about how we give solutions to those who come to us seeking our advice? There will be more uncertainty. There will be more risk. There is so much we don't know, and there is so much that could go wrong. Again, we're called upon as consultants to be able to dig this information, to preempt, so that we can continue to add value to those that come to us for help. Now, how are we as consultants anchored, or how are we structured? What is our DNA? Well, there's a need to scrutinize business consulting practices and their appropriateness. And the reason I raise that question is because during COVID, there was distress, there was turmoil. And when we needed these people most to come through for us, their visibility was at its lowest. I also opine that there is a need to dissect the governing principles around consulting. And we must assess how what we do or what we provide is fit for the purposes, or rather fit for the purpose any consumer has come to us for. Now, it must be remembered, and this is my thinking, that consultants should help develop new insights. So more than ever before, when a consumer walks through the door seeking our advice or help, we must seek to give them an aha moment, which basically speaks to telling them something they had not thought through or thought about, and which will significantly change their circumstances. So when I think about consultants and how they should be anchored, those are the three questions that come to mind. Now, let's quickly look at the sides of consulting. What are the sides of consulting? And what are the types of consulting? This is just, again, to bring a bit of clarity around how I have scoped this conversation. When we talk about a consultant or consulting, we are referring to somebody with technical knowledge, someone who is a specialist in a specific field. In management, we call that the what. So that is one side of consulting. The second side of consulting is the need to be analytical. So you have information because you have had a sit down with your client. Are you analytical around it? That includes logical reasoning. That includes the judgment that you make of the information that has been made available to you. And that includes the need to leverage on evidence every time you want to give advice. So the other side of consulting, which I think has been ignored for many years, is the need to be analytical. Finally, what is the other side that we need to be thinking about? Interpersonal skills cannot or could never be overemphasized at this particular point. This addresses, we already know you have the technical skills or the technical knowledge. We already know that you can analyze, you have good logical reasoning, but we must now ask the question, how are you going to deliver this? And that actually captures the behavioral attributes that you bring into play when you're consulting for somebody. So those are, I see, as the three critical sides that a consultant should be thinking about today more than ever before. But what are the types of consulting that I can quickly think about? Now, here I borrowed from a scholar by the name Charles Margarison, who wrote a very interesting book in 2007. He classified consulting into 4 different parts. A consultant could take the doctor model. Now, the doctor model simply means a client has a disease that needs curing. Your work is to diagnose and prescribe for that particular disease. Second type of consulting, it could be one of being a detective, or what they call a detective model. Now, this kind of consultant identifies the problem. He comes in, you have a problem, you have no idea what it is, but he helps you to identify it. and pinpoint who is culpable or which process is culpable so that a solution can be designed around it. So that is what a detective model of a consultant does. Then, of course, you have the sales model. Now, the sales model, this is very, very typical in the IT space, where somebody has a product off the shelf that can speak to your digital solution requirements. So this kind of consultant has solutions that can solve a client's problem, and they wait for the client to come and buy it off them, as they also teach and advise them on how to use it. Then the last type of a consultant is within the travel agency model. So this is purely advisory. A company or a business is seeking new direction on how to do things. So you can now place yourself, if you're a consultant, you can place yourself where you sit within that matrix, or if you're a client, if you're a customer who needs help, then you can now identify what kind of consultant you need to be dealing with. So who is a consultant? Again, this is just to help us in the conversation so that we have one understanding. 10 people may have 10 different definitions, but for our purposes, I will argue that the word consultant implies giving advice. It connotes a special knowledge which, when required, is given out, but at a cost. That is how I would like to define a consultant. They have the knowledge, they have the know what, they have the know where, know who, and know when. They also have the know how, and they have the know why. So that would be my classification of a typical consultant that you'd like to work to and do business with. Now, having spoken about what a consultant is and some of the challenges that come with COVID, we took time to just try and enumerate the common difficulties or the common challenges that a typical consultant faces. And I listed a few that I wanted to share with you. Number one, and this one I saw it in my world of practice when I was in corporate world, multinationals, be it a Pan-African organization. One thing I realized about many consultants is that listening is not their strength. So we tend to listen very selectively. The other big misgiving with many consultants is they believe that one problem or several problems can be solved with the same approach, what other people like to call one size fits all. This inevitably leads or provokes the wrong conversations. And if you have wrong conversations, you have the wrong solutions. So listening, which is an art in the field of consultancy, is a big challenge to most of us. Number two, what challenge do we face as consultants? It is to scope. By scoping, I simply mean to narrow down to what the real issue is, the real issue that needs addressing, and all the other parameters around it. And so you'll see a lot of consultants most of the time going off script, addressing things that are not critical to the problem being discussed or the problem being solved. So scoping or bounding is another critical issue that most of us as consultants face. Either we are too limited, or we are too broad, or very ambiguous, lacking in specificity. The other problem most of us face as consultants is managing around time and scheduling events logically. I was having a very interesting conversation yesterday on some work I'm supposed to consult in. And I was taking over from another consultant who has been doing this piece of work for some time. And so when I asked, please give me a roadmap on how you intended previously to arrive at the end that you've designed for yourselves, I could see the client had a problem pulling out anything that we could use. So it clearly showed that they knew what they wanted to do, but they had no plan around it. That's another very big problem most of us have and have to think about. Now, when we're dealing with the client, our client has stakeholders. So we must ask ourselves, who are these stakeholders? So we must scope them. we must also understand what their expectations are within those businesses or within those organizations, so that when we are offering a solution to the client, it is all inclusive. This is something most of us miss as consultants, and as a result, we end up giving a solution that has not received the buy-in of all critical persons. So in the interest of time, I'll just run through the rest. Consultancy work comes with the need for change. And sometimes it creates a bit of a crisis. So the one thing, again, we have not done very well as consultants is to have a discipline around change, or bringing about change, or having clear disciplines on how to deal with crises that will emerge because of the change process. So many times we leave the client worse off than we found them. Knowledge creation is key if we are to be good consultants. Managing that knowledge is also critical if we are to be good consultants. But very few of us have the depth to understand how to create knowledge so they can use it to their advantage and manage it effectively to create the new frontier of value. Finally, because I won't go through all of them, it's the issue of the realization of the benefits. When a client comes to us, we have a problem. With that problem, if it was solved, they expect certain benefits to come with it. Now, a lot of us consultants, what we have done in the past is gone in, give what we thought to be the solution to that problem, and then we walk away. 6 months later, when you do an audit to see whether the benefits that were envisaged when that particular project was thought about, whether that has come to be, you find that it has not been achieved. So the benefits could be quantitative. Either we want the revenues to go up, or we want the operations to be more efficient. And if the operation that will be more efficient, we expect that the costs that we incur running our businesses and organizations will be lower. Now, these are the things that we call benefits. Most of us have failed to look at that as a critical success factor. Now, this leads me to what some people have described the world of consulting to be. Now, the other day, this was very interesting. I went for a dental review, and I met my dentist, Dr. Keynote, and we had not been in contact for a long time. So he asked me, Julian, what are you doing now? And I told him, I'm now a consultant. And he gave a wry smile, a little of a laugh. And this is what he said. I'm a consultant is a polite way of saying I am not employed. Now that really hit me hard. I realized that we are clearly not the most respected group of people. So that's one way that people look at us. And that is demeaning enough for us to want to ask, what do we need to do differently so that there's more acceptance of consultants? Now, another referencing that I came across, and this came from an old operations director of mine by the name Hugh Hawkins. I worked with him in Barclays. This is what he said. A consultant tells you what you already know in a different way. Now, this is very, very interesting. And I want to agree with him. For the 25 plus years that I've worked in organizations, I've come into contact with so many kinds of consultants, including those who help to do what? To put up systems for us, new systems for us. But his argument is true. There was actually no major change even after they did what they were meant to do. So that raises pertinent questions about how consultants do their work. Now, I made this comment before I became a consultant, and it's a pity that now I have to live with it. This is what I've thought of consultants in the past, and I'm hoping I can help change that paradigm. I call them over-glorified tellers, incapable of doing. And this is so real, at least in the world that I live, in the world of work that I live, that somebody will come and give you very good ideas on how you can solve a problem. I know 2 instances where an employer said, you've articulated this very well, I want to trust that you can execute it to deliver the same benefits that you argued you would. Could I please offer you a job and ask you to do it exactly the same way that you indicated you delivered it? 6 months later, they had to separate ways because the consultant could not deliver on what he was preaching. So this is how highly we are seen in the marketplace. And this is why we are not as appreciated as I think we should, given that we should be seen to have technical knowledge. We should be seen to be well analytical with logical reasoning, and we should be seen to have very good soft skills that allows us to go around the issues that we face on a day-to-day. So because of what I've just described, you end up with a situation of underperformance, little or no impact. You end up with a situation of status quo. 4 years later, we are doing things the same way we used to do before. There's zero value addition and there's waste, even after we have been involved. Now, I also talked about in the opening, I said that I would like to speak briefly about how I think we would approach consultancy differently. And I also wanted to share this with my audience today. Now, the approach that we're taking is designed to overcome the unsatisfactory outcomes that I've just mentioned earlier. Now, first and foremost, I believe, and I think this should stand true for all of us, problem scoping is key when you want to offer a solution to a client as a consultant. And problem scoping comes with a clear understanding on what the problem is, the problem that needs to be solved is. If you are hiring a human resource person, the act of hiring is not an end in itself. It is what that hire is supposed to deliver as value that is pivotal to the person paying you for that consultancy work. So problem definition is key. I'm looking for a resource person who has these attributes, who has these skills, who has this experience, but ultimately, it is the value they will bring to the organization or to the business that counts. So that is the first way that we want to approach the work of consultancy. We also appreciate, and I think all consultants should, that you cannot operate in a vacuum. You must collaborate with others. There will be problems that will require cross-functional interventions. And since you cannot be a subject matter expert in everything, you need to bring others on board who can also participate and contribute to solving a problem in a more holistic manner. So that's critical for us at Schedules. What else do we see as critical? The need to understand the market in which you operate, or the market in which the client operates, and the need to be able to analyze the trend within that market is information that is so critical to delivering good results to your client. So how is the market behaving? How are the people in the same sector moving? What direction are they moving and why? So that we can use some of these as case studies to understand what we can borrow as best practice or even benchmark ourselves against others. As a consultant, you must love to do research. You must love to look for information. But even more importantly, is that every intervention that we will propose to the client must be supported by evidence. That we are suggesting we do this, and the reason we're suggesting we do this is because of the following data, which when put together suggests that this is what needs to be done. As consultants, again, I've always argued for one problem, try and have a minimum of 3 interventions or a minimum of 3 solutions. And that can only come when you do a proper scenario analysis. For example, client has this particular problem. What are the possible situations that would arise that I need to be able to effectively respond to as a consultant? That way, you're not caught by surprises, by something you had not thought through coming to later affect what the client wanted to solve as a problem. I've talked about critical thinking, but let me speak just a little bit about the need for influencing as an attribute. As a consultant, I want to be able to influence change with the organization or the business or the client that I'm working with. Now, how will I influence? How will I be of influence? Sorry. There are only three ways you can be of influence, and they actually take a certain order. One is our personality or your personality. What kind of personality do you have as a consultant? Most critically, under personality, can I trust you? So at Scheduled, we want first and foremost, when a client comes to us, they can trust us that we can solve the problem, or that we can lead them, or that we can advise them. So personality is key. After personality, how else can I be of influence in this particular organization, business, or client? Empathy. Do I understand their issues? Do I see their issues from their lens and not my own? And I listen actively to be able to understand that. So I have a strong personality. They can respect me. They believe that I can get the job done. But most importantly, I understand them. I know where they're coming from. I can fit into their shoes and feel where it pinches most. That is called empathy. Now, how else can I be of influence as a consultant? The use of logical argument. Now, this is where we are talking about your evidence, your data to back up what you're saying. You've done scenario analysis, so you're very clear about the different scenarios that may arise. That is logical argument. But what you see a lot in the consultancy world of today is logical argument takes precedence over everything else. We are arguing that logical argument comes last. Personality comes first, which is trust, followed by empathy, a feeling of understanding. Only then can you push through your logical argument. So those are some of the approaches that we are suggesting at Schedules that could be very useful and very powerful in helping address a client's problem. The kind of questions you ask. How broad are they? How specific are they? How complex are they? What kind of debates do they generate? And then, of course, the literature that you review, the literature that you search. We cannot pretend that we know it all. What have others said about this particular problem? Those are critical components for us in delivering for a client. What are our reasons? Why would that be our approach at Schedules? And why would we want to share this? Just trying to change the world of consultancy and challenge each other to be better people out there so that we can earn greater respect than we are today. Now you've just seen the referencing that I've shared earlier. Our reasons, again, I'll just mention a few. That approach that I've just listed ensures completeness in solving some of the problems that our clients bring to us. Completeness. So when I am working with others, when I'm collaborating with others to solve the client's problem, I bring completeness. Why else is this important? Our approach ensures due diligence, that you clearly understand the problems clients are facing, and you clearly understand all other indirect factors that influence that particular problem. Why else is this important? Our approach helps us to assess and review the internal capabilities of our client. Because sometimes we make certain recommendations to the client when actually they have no capacity to deliver on it. But if you have the right conversation with them and you have suggestions on how you think they can solve their problems, the approach helps you to identify the gaps in internal capabilities. And then again, you can sit and have another conversation around that. This approach increases the knowledge base. This approach allows us to benchmark. This approach allows us to apply best practice. More important, it keeps us focused on the problem. More important, it keeps us focused on the client. More important, it helps us justify the solutions that we give, and the decisions that we make in collaboration with the client. More important, the approach helps us to measure our success before and after. I'm coming towards the end of my presentation. So what kind of results should you expect with this kind of approach? If you came to us and we discussed your problem with you, and we took the approach that we have just shared, what are we committing that you will be able to achieve or to gain as a client? One, rapid results that is quantifiable. We promise you that with that approach, clearly understanding what your problem is, we should be able to give you rapid results that you can measure. What else should you expect as a result? A smooth transition. Consultancy work triggers change. Change triggers some element of chaos. But we say that with this approach, we should be able to have a smooth transition from the state of chaos that our proposition may create to business as usual. What is the other result you should expect? You should expect that will generate very good knowledge for you, and we'll be able to disseminate it to all the people that you work with, so that there's alignment on what the problem is and what the solution should look like. What else should you see or should you expect as a result? A lot of learning. As you are acting, as you're trying to solve the problem together, you are learning. You know what to change, you know what to continue, you know what to stop because you are learning. The other benefit of this approach is that you as a client will be able to make very good decisions in an environment full of risk and uncertainty. What else should you expect? Effective implementation, and finally, the realization of the benefits that I spoke of earlier. Purity?
Yes, thank you so much, Julian, for that. Very insightful, very educative, eye-opening, especially in the space of business consulting. We'll tackle a few questions just before we get to the top of the hour.
Yeah.
So my first question will be, what does a consultant typically do? Because I've heard you mention, like, we get these consultants, they just come, do a bit of work, yet there's no really actualization. So in your own opinion, what do you think consultants typically do?
That's a very good question, Purity. And this is critical for both those who consume consultancy services and the consultants themselves. As a client, I want to ask the same question. Now, what does a consultant typically do? In my thinking, a consultant must do just two things. One, solve a problem. You're being given a problem to solve. Solve it. That's number one. After you have solved it, demonstrate value. Those are the things that a consultant should do. Whether you're in HR, whether you're in IT, whatever field you are in, but people are seeking your advice or your opinion on something, show them or solve the problem for them. But solving the problem is just one aspect of it. Demonstrate that there has been value addition by solving it. And the value addition can either be quantified or qualified in one way or the other. So until you can do the two and do that effectively, I'll be hesitant to look at myself as a consultant, Purity. I don't know if I've answered the question.
Yes, you have very clearly. So I think just to let the audience know, this is the question and answer segment. So if you have any questions, we are happy to take them. And I believe Julian will be able to give us solutions or answers to those problems. In the meantime, let me shoot you another question.
Yes.
Given your long years of corporate engagement, what is your assessment on consultants that you have come in contact with? Like, what are some of the good practices, and what do you think are some of the challenges we are facing?
Okay, I've had the privilege of engaging with a lot of consultants over many years in my corporate life. And I've seen both good practices and what you have classified as challenges. I will start from challenges. A lot of those consultants that I came into contact with, at least this is what I felt, they were very short in listening. Very, very short in listening. And they had this straitjacket in which they wanted to place me. So they already have a solution, even ahead of me being very clear on what the problem is. So that was a big challenge. That was number one. Number two, I am not making sense as a client. What I'm trying to have solved and the approach that I want to take doesn't make sense. But the consultant does not have the courage to correct me and realign me. And maybe this is because at the end of the day, they will still get their pay. And that is something I saw a lot of. So listening was one of those. It's very, very selective and very little in terms of alignment or corrective alignment. But most important, and this was a bit of a surprise, I've come to learn that inclusivity is very, very important. Scoping your stakeholders, understanding what their needs are, even within that particular change process, is very, very, very important. But in my many years in the corporate world, I don't remember a time when a consultant deliberately scoped their stakeholders and took time to discuss or address the same problem or the same question with them to get their perspective. So what happened? You do your work over a period of 3 to 6 months. Now, when you're coming now to get a sign-off for it, that stakeholder that you neglected or who you did not confront or spoken to is in the meeting room. The very basic questions that could have been addressed earlier on in the project or in the consultancy work comes up in the boardroom, and it becomes the reason why your proposals get shut down. So that again is something that I saw very common. The other problem, again, I see a lot with challenges, rather not a problem that I see with consultants, is that the aspects of, I'll give an example of a project that needed a huge investment, and the huge investment was supposed to translate into serious revenues for an organization and significant cost cuttings for the same organization. But the computation of numbers so that you can make a case, the computation of numbers so that you could show the payback period, the break-even point, and whatever else, other ratios that you may be interested in. The workings around it was not properly done. And so the numbers did not tell the story. I know of an organization that spent about 40 million Kenya shillings in that kind of process, only to end up canceling the consultancy work altogether, 40 million Kenya shillings less. So that is on the challenges. And that is mainly around the conversations that people have. But what are the good sides? What are the good things that I have seen with most of these consultants? Is that most of them come with knowledge. So the know-how is there. They can dissect your problem and they can tell you where they think that problem is. So the knowledge is there, but it's in the way that they dispense it or in the way that they analyze it relative to your problem that I always used to find to be a gap. What about meetings? Consultants are very good in managing meetings, only if they could turn those meetings into something productive. But follow-up meetings, they'll do a good job, very, very good job. Entry meeting, they'll do a very good job. Problem definition meeting, they will do a very good job. Delivery becomes the other issue. So theoretically, I don't know if I've answered your question. It was quite broad, but that is
yes.
That is what quickly comes to my mind.
All right, you've answered it perfectly. We'll take one more question from Caroline A. She's asking, what were the biggest challenges as you are beginning the consultancy journey? Did you have mentors to guide you and work with you? Julian?
Oh, okay. Very good question. Thank you, Caroline, for that question. I think what I have learned, and I was discussing this with a critical friend 2 days ago who actually ended up having the same experience as me. The biggest challenge I faced starting my consultancy work is that I did not sweat my network, or I did not create the kind of relationship with my network that could make them see me as consultant in the future. In other words, the act or the work of beginning a consultancy practice should begin when you're actively employed. Because for some strange reasons, people have a way, or there's some kind of respect that comes with, employability. So I'm doing this, and yes, I'm an authority in it. This is what I do at my place of work, but I can also help you in my private capacity. Now, I missed out on that. I was this kind of person who used to do my work exceptionally well. You go for this, what do you call them? You go for this high noon tea with clients and colleagues, and you just discuss typical business office work, but you do not talk about the possibility of doing something in the future where you may need their support. Now, if I was to live my life again, I would change that aspect. So that has been one challenge. The other challenge is when you go out and you want to do a piece of work for someone, especially at the beginning, many people will ask you, what have you done before? Can you demonstrate what you have done before, and what kind of results did you achieve? Now you can imagine you're just starting your consultancy work. The people that you should have been working with, you're left not having created that thread or that kind of network that could allow you to have a good start. But now your first job, you're being asked to demonstrate that you can actually get the job done. That was very frustrating, Carol. And I dedicated about 2 years, if I'm not wrong, building a portfolio. And much of it, I was doing it pro bono so that I could raise our profile as a company, and we can be able to argue that we have done this and this and that and that and that and that. Today, that has given us a lot more confidence. We can confront, we can approach anybody and say what we can do. If they want to know how, we can make references. So those are the challenges. You've asked me about the area. Yeah, you talked about mentorship. I'll mention that very quickly. Purity. Yes, you need mentors. You need people who critique you. You need people who actually push you and stretch you. So for me, I've surrounded myself with a lot of good people, but most of who critique me to make me better. And of course, I have other people who have done this before me, ages before me. I have people in HR who guide me. I have people in IT who guide me. I have people who have done consultancy for 20 years who guide me. So Caroline, to your question, you need mentorship. It's a different world out there. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Julian. I think that was very comprehensive. We'll take our final question now because we have 5 minutes to the end of the webinar. The question is from scholar Kayugira. A number of people claim that engaging a consultant is a waste of money, but more often than not, this statement is made by someone who picked the consultant's report and threw it in the dustbin. How do you at Schedules Consulting ensure effective implementation of your reports or propose solutions to ensure that the clients get the value for their money? So I think this is post work. What's the implementation strategy?
Okay, that's a brilliant question, Scholar, and thanks for shooting that. Now, in both aspects, you're right. I can authoritatively argue that managing or rather engaging a consultant is a waste of time and resources. That is number one. But there are two sides of that coin. The other side is, okay, you consulted, what did you do with the information out of it? Now, there are 4 steps, Scholar, that a good consultant should seek to drive a change or a solution process. Now, when I want to talk to Scholar about solving her problem, I want to first be able to evaluate. So as a consultant, the first thing I want to do is to evaluate the circumstances or the situation she finds herself relative to the problem she wants to solve. That's number one. I have evaluated, I've only done one step. The next step is to develop a report. So Scholar, after evaluation, I will do a report for your consumption. And the report will be very clear about what needs to be done and the reasons why. The report will be very clear on quantifiable benefits if properly implemented. So you have evaluated, that's point one. And if you just do evaluation and walk away, you have failed your client. Then you've done the report. If you've done the report and then you walk away, you have again failed your client, because to your point, it ends up in the dustbin. Now, in our model, after evaluation and reporting, we will invite ourselves to implement. And this may be a conversation around how do we model the implementation so that we do not deal with the typical secretarial management work. So I've evaluated, I've reported, and I ask, can I implement this for you as you remain the overall project sponsor? So we do the implementation and we execute that to your satisfaction. After implementation, 6 months later, I would like to come back and do a post-implementation review so that the benefits for which you had seen yourself getting out of this project, we can actually go back and validate that that happened. So Scholar, to ensure that it's not just a report that ends up in the dustbin, those are the 4 steps that we will take as scheduled. I hope I've answered the question.
I also hope the same, but you've answered it very comprehensively. So I think we come to the end of our webinar today. Do you have the contact page, Julian?
The contact page, let me see if you can get it. I'm happy to actually type it down there, my contacts and everything. If that can do.
Yes. So thank you very much to everyone who was able to join our webinar today. We look forward to hosting you in our next webinar, which we hope we've planned for it in the month of November 11th. So make sure you tune in just to check what we're doing in the space of consultancy business, more so strategy and operations consultancy. Our website is, as Julian writes it down, is www.schedules.co.ke. Feel free to drop us an email on hello@schedules.co.ke. Our contact info is, feel free to call us or WhatsApp us on 0768889337 or 0720401583. So I think that is it from us for now. Julian, are you able to project the page?
Oh, yeah, my technology fails me when I need most. Let me see if I can pull it out.
All right.
But it's just as you have mentioned, www.schedules.co.ke.
Yes.
And then if you need our phone contact details, it is 0720-401-583. 0720-401-583. And thank you so much for indulging us in this conversation. Thank you, Purity, for your able moderation.
Awesome. So thank you very much. This is to wish you a good evening, or is it a good night? Until next time, continue keeping safe, maintaining distance, washing your hands, and also wearing a mask. And God bless you all. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.